Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard, where we talk about the issues that men and boys face in today's modern world. My name is Dan, and today I want to talk to you about a rampant issue, one that men face each and every day. That issue is false allegations, an issue that has caused innocent men to lose everything, to have their lives destroyed, to have their freedom taken away. 18 years ago, a case shocked the nation, one that created a sea of change, some good, some bad, some very bad, especially for men, as it caused rights, basic human rights, to be stripped away from men like never before. Headlines screamed for months about privileged college athletes being accused of heinous crimes. Those headlines screamed over and over again, "It's all men till it's no men." What am I talking about? The Duke Lacrosse case, as it became known. The case where a woman claimed she'd been held down and sexually assaulted by 3 men at a college party, and which then became a lightning rod for discussions on privilege, race, gender, and justice. It sparked tremendous backlash, not just on the accused students, but all men. And it's not an understatement to say that much of the current paradigm we live in, and especially in the college area, where accusations made against male students by female ones are automatically presumed to be true. Where now, as a society, we believe that men are guilty until proven innocent. It has led to the Believe All Women institutional policies, which have been implemented in campuses across the country, where, as I said, presumption of innocence, one that is supposedly guaranteed by our Constitution, has been thrown right out the window. It's led to policies where due process, which is also supposed to be guaranteed in our Constitution, has been systemically denied to the accused men. Men now, by policy in many institutions, aren't even allowed the opportunity to defend themselves or question the accuser in their cases. But it isn't stopping there. Many are advocating that this become the law not just on college campuses, but across the country, across the world. That case, which caused so much division, caused so much turmoil, caused so much debate, has now, after nearly 2 decades, fully come to light. Crystal Magnum, the woman who accused several Duke lacrosse players of R-ing her earlier this week, admitted she lied. That she made the entire story up. For 18 years, she told a lie that, as we'll show, ruined lives, not just of the men she falsely accused, but thousands and thousands of other young men who also were falsely accused by other women just like her, all while facing no recriminations, no accountability whatsoever for doing so. I'm going to delve into that a bit further and discuss why this is an important lesson for men, for women, and for society as a whole to take heed. First, let's take a look back at what happened and what this revelation means for us today. In March of 2006, Crystal Magnum, a stripper and escort, claimed she was sexually assaulted by 3 members of the Duke University lacrosse team at a party. The allegations were explosive, and it became part of the nightly news reports every day for weeks. Outrage poured in and ultimately led to the suspension of the remainder of the lacrosse season, the resignation of the team's coach, and an avalanche of media coverage condemning Duke University, its board of trustees, the chancellor, as well as the male student population at large. The 3 accused men, David Evans, Colin Finnerty, and Reed Seligman, found themselves at the center of this firestorm. They were condemned and convicted by the court of public opinion and immediately labeled heinous criminals. There was no pause to assess the veracity of the claims made against them, let alone allow them to tell their side of the story. It was so bad that it even became dangerous for anyone to even question the truth of the claims. For anyone to say, hey, can we take a moment to look at the evidence first so we can find out if they're actually guilty before we just declare them to be? Shortly after the story broke, the 3 young men were charged with first-degree forcible rape, sexual offense, and kidnapping. Serious crimes. Their faces were plastered across every major news outlet, and their reputations were dragged through the mud and continue to be in some circles even today. The accusations were devastating not just to them, but to their families, to the entire Duke lacrosse team, the entire Duke campus. And the case wasn't just about allegations. It quickly became a symbol, a tool used to push an agenda. One that said, it's all men till it's no men. And most were quick to fall in line with that agenda, rushing to condemn the players and in turn all men, painting them as entitled and guilty before any evidence was presented. Politicians had press conferences condemning the men and promising changes. Protests erupted, not just at Duke, but on college campuses across the country, demanding justice for Magnum, demanding justice for all women. It even led to the case being used to fight against things like shared parenting, as I personally saw when members of NOW who opposed the implementation of shared parenting in New York used the case as proof of just how dangerous men and fathers were, and why fathers should continue to be removed from their child's lives, lest they, as one said to me, do what those animals did. And it didn't stop there. As facts started coming to light and people began to legitimately raise questions about whether Miss Magnum was telling the truth, those who dared to raise those questions, who dared to say, can we take a step back and look at the facts before rushing to judgment, were viciously attacked. I myself was doxxed for daring to write an op-ed article saying just that. An article where I simply said, can we not rush to judgment? Can we not see what the evidence is and what the courts say first? Instead, after writing that, I was labeled a rape apologist and even called a rapist myself. How dare I question her word or that of any woman? How dare I say, can we see the evidence that supports her claim? Funny, since then and since Miss Magnum's admission, I haven't heard a single apology from any of those who said that. Not then, not now. Gee, I wonder why. And it wasn't just me. So quick was the rush to judgment, so deep was the narrative that anyone who dared to question that narrative was themselves guilty of committing crimes like that, that all of us were met with fierce backlash and in many cases silenced. Undaunted though, some legitimate journalists, commenters, and even some legal experts continued to ask critical questions. And thank God they did. They were asking questions like, where is the evidence? Even as they were accused of being apologists for rape. The mantra was clear in the marching orders given that we must believe all women, and it's all men till it's no men. Soon after the initial outcry, cracks in the case started to come out. Most telling was the DNA evidence didn't match the accused players. Add to it that Miss Magnum's story shifted repeatedly, and it became evidence that the prosecutor, one Mike Nifong, who ultimately was forced to resign in disgrace and who got disbarred, was withholding exculpatory evidence. Put another way, he refused to release the proof that the boys were completely innocent in order to continue to push the agenda. In fact, in April of 2007, after a thorough investigation, current North Carolina Governor and then Attorney General Roy Cooper declared all three of the players to be innocent, calling them victims of a tragic rush to accuse. Yet despite their complete exoneration, the damage was already done, and in many respects continues to this day. These young men had their lives turned upside down, their reputations tarnished, their futures derailed, and their families left to pick up the pieces. To this day, there is a significant group of people who still believe them to be guilty. Despite evidence to the contrary, the Me Too movement has continued to cite this case and those boys as the poster children for believe all women for years now. They've even lobbied to remove the presumption of innocence, citing, as they put it, the ordeal Crystal Magnum has had to face for trying to bring her attackers to justice. And let's not forget the other members of the Duke lacrosse team who lost their season and never got any of those games back. or the head coach who had his career destroyed. All of them faced consequences and were accused not because of what they did, but simply based on the word of Miss Magnum. A word which now has been proven, by her own admission, to be a complete and utter lie. It's all completely unraveled. This week, Crystal Magnum publicly has admitted what many already suspected, that she fabricated the entire story, made the whole thing up. And it begs the question, will this revelation be a moment of reckoning? Will it lead to meaningful discussion on the very real issue of rampant false allegations and the devastating effects it has on those who are accused? Will lawmakers and the judicial system finally take this seriously and hold those who commit these crimes accountable? Will Miss Magnum be held accountable? Will she face charges for destroying the lives of so many? Or will she simply walk away scot-free? Time will tell, but I'm not holding my breath. The Duke Lacrosse case wasn't just an isolated incident. It highlighted the dangers of presuming guilt. In the years since, movements like Me Too have only amplified the idea that we must always believe women, without question. That rights guaranteed under the Constitution should be stripped away from men who are accused. That men should be presumed to be guilty and even sent to prison without even the slightest opportunity to defend themselves. It has even led to the weaponization of allegations to discredit men in places like corporations or the government. How many men have you seen who've been anonymously accused of committing sexual offenses against women only to be vilified for daring to protest their innocence in the years since? Kavanaugh, Russell Brand, Matt Gaetz have all faced allegations, often from those hiding in anonymity, to name just a few. Their guilt presumed without any corroborating evidence ever being offered. Hell, even now, pretty much every candidate that President Trump has tried to appoint to his administration has been accused in some way of committing sexual misconduct. Hegseth, Kennedy Jr., hell, even Linda McMahon have all faced allegations. It's become a tried and true weapon used to deny and discredit anyone that the left in particular opposes, and it speaks to how serious and how dangerous this problem is. And the argument can be made that the lies told by Miss Magnum some 20 years ago went a long way towards creating that dynamic. Let me be clear here. Supporting victims and taking allegations seriously are crucial, but not at the expense of abandoning due process and the presumption of innocence. Yes, we need to have compassion for true victims, but the fact is, as I've pointed out in many cases, including the Duke one, the actual victim is the ones being accused. What about them? What about their rights? Where is the caring, concern, and compassion for them? Add to it, what about the effects on actual victims whose pleas won't be heard, who won't be believed because of the rampant lies and false allegations made by women like Miss Magnum? And what about the rights of all involved? Will justice simply become a thing of the past? As I've mentioned, increasingly many within the Me Too movement and on the left have argued that men accused of misconduct should have no right to defend themselves, that they should be held accountable, declared guilty, simply based on the word of their accuser and nothing more. This mindset is not only dangerous, but profoundly unjust. The Duke Lacrosse case should serve as a cautionary tale and should bring about discussion on these issues. It shows us what happens when we allow emotions and societal narratives to override evidence and fairness. And yet, in the nearly 2 decades since, we've learned little. If anything, we've encouraged even more false allegations and accusations, ones which have ruined millions of lives. As for Miss Magnum, to date she's faced no real consequences for her actions. No criminal charges for perjury, no lawsuits for defamation. And I, for one, would be shocked if anything were done now. Meanwhile, the players she's accused, their families, and all of the others who were negatively affected still have to bear the burden, still have to carry the scars of their ordeal. Where's the accountability? Cases like this demand more than just outrage. They require a shift in how we approach justice. Believing victims and ensuring fair investigations are not mutually exclusive. We must reject the dangerous notion that accusations are proof of guilt. We must hold those who make false allegations accountable. They should, at a minimum, face criminal charges and, if convicted, serve time in prison for doing so. I'd argue that that time should equate to the time their victims would have served had they been convicted. The argument that enacting laws that hold false accusers accountable will dissuade actual victims from reporting their attacks rings hollow because it denies the existence of those who are victims when they're falsely accused. It says to those victims, almost always men, you don't matter and you aren't worthy of justice. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the Duke Lacrosse case reminds us of the importance of due process, the need for evidence, and the human cost of false allegations. It reminds us of why we have a Bill of Rights, and why those rights should be considered sacrosanct, not something to be thrown away merely because of the gender of the person accused. It's time to move beyond the simplistic slogans and embrace a judicial system that's fair for everyone, men and women alike. And it's time to have a conversation, a real conversation, and address these issues so that we don't allow history to repeat itself. It's time we demanded better. In the end, this case isn't just about the lives that were destroyed or the lessons it holds for the judicial system. It's about how we as society need to grapple with how to balance the rights of the accused with the need to support victims. It's about asking ourselves, how do we move forward in a way that ensures fairness for everyone? False allegations have a long history, from the Salem witch trials to the modern courtroom, especially in ones like family court. The Duke Lacrosse case is part of this troubling pattern. It reminds us that justice must be based on evidence, not emotion, and not societal pressure. And let us remind ourselves, despite Magnum's confession, there has been little public outcry to hold her accountable. Many are arguing we just need to move on. But how can we truly move on without addressing the systemic issues that this case exposed? Why hasn't there been any accountability for her or really any of those who perpetuated this false narrative, including the media and many legal professionals? You can call me crazy, but I can only hope that discussions around due process and the presumption of innocence will now gain some traction. That more people will question the believe all women mantra, advocating instead for a listen and investigate approach. This isn't about discrediting victims. It's about ensuring justice is served fairly and impartially. And as we reflect on this case and others like it, let's commit to building a society that champions truth and justice. A society that protects the innocent, supports genuine victims, and holds those who weaponize falsehoods accountable. The Duke Lacrosse case may be behind us, but its lessons are more relevant than ever. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and share it so that we can bring others to the table and have a discussion. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when I release future videos bringing attention to the issues that men and boys face in today's society. Together, we can make a difference.